Okay, here we are back at the Yellow Hive, and today my intent for this inspection is to assess whether this colony is strong enough to be used for a queen rearing technique known locally as the Ernie Shuffle. This is popularized on a Facebook group called Texas Friendly Beekeepers, and I've forgotten his last name. I should know it, but one of them is a queen rearer named Ernie, and he has introduced, along with Stan, and I'm blanking out on his name. You know, you know these names until you're on the spot for them. But at any rate, they've popularized a queen rearing technique called that they call the Ernie Shuffle, which involves basically just taking the queen out of the colony for a little bit, giving her another place to live briefly, so that the remainder of the colony recognizes that they're queenless, and they start to create replacement queens, which you can then come back a week later, 8 days later, and cut out or carry frames out to other hives. Now, in this case, instead of having to use a nuke, since I have this lay-ins frame with multiple entrances, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this empty half of the hive for the queen instead of having to set up a little nuke box on top of the hive, and there will be a partition between them, so it'll be one colony, two separate colonies rather. So I'll if I find the queen and if they look strong enough, I'll move the queen over here, give her the frames that she needs to get by for a week, and then they'll make queen cells, which I'll take to other colonies, and then I'll come back and I'll join the queen back to the original colony. So that's the plan for today. Now, I'm going to remove this board, and just so I don't forget to do it later, I'm going to invert it because I've got it on these standoff screws so that under normal circumstances my bees can get out into this side of the colony, and they do that sometimes when it's hot, but now they're going to not be able to get past that board when I've got it all stood up tight. So I'm going to just check. Right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 frames here, and they're not using all of them. I wanted to see how far along they are, so we'll just start looking at them and moving them out of the way. So what did I say, 12? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so this is frame 12, and it's a new frame. They've not done anything with it at all. I'm actually going to pull that out because right now I'm short of frames, and if they're not going to make use of it yet, not for a while it looks like, then I may have other uses for it. And the same thing with frame 11. I haven't really started on it. You can see what I did was a fair amount of shuffling around of frames a few weeks ago, and as I took one out I gave them an empty frame. Alright, so that one, that's frame 10, and now here we get to frame 9, and it's in the same state, but this time because they will need some frames to grow on, I'm going to leave that one in. And this one is frame 8. And on frame 8, we've got a lot of drone size cells, some worker size cells. Looks like they're using it to store pollen. And they're not really storing anything on the other side. So that is frame 8. Pretty docile here compared to the hive I was just looking at in my backyard. I'd rather have you girls in the backyard than those others. All right, this is a fairly new frame, and they are drawing it out. Maybe a little bit of pollen. They're not really using it. So between these two, they have quite a bit of space still to work with before they even get to the new one that I added, the empty one there on the end. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is frame 6. And this one came from one of the other colonies. I'm really concerned about the strength. I'm not seeing nearly as many bees as I thought I would be seeing here. Maybe that's my fault for taking some frames away from them for queen rearing and such, but they are storing some honey and some pollen here. And this frame was collected. It's 3 separate pieces here that they're welding together, and so they've got a lot of space that they can still draw out here. They're not making a lot of use of this one. All right, so now we come to frame 5. All right, even frame 5 is, I see some pollen, I see some nectar. Lots of pollen, lots of nectar. Lots of bees, and I'm seeing drones. I really thought that I'd see brood here. All right, so now we're down to frame 4. And I now have some concerns about this hive, because I really thought I'd see a lot more bees and a lot more brood. Here I have some brood. And some of it is fairly new. The queen could be here. Take a good look for her. So I did have some slight concern. The last time I was in here, I was a little concerned. Okay, I see very young brood, and I see eggs here. So this frame could be used for creating a queen. And on this side, I see eggs and young brood. Alright, so starting on frame 4, we've got brood. So it looks like we don't have... This is where I start to see more of the population numbers that I expect. Alright, here we go. Nice frame of bees. We've got some brood. I see eggs. Okay, so now the question is, will I find the queen? She's marked, and she's frequently been pretty easy to find. I didn't see her the last time I was in here. So frames 3 and 4 have the eggs and brood that we need for the Ernie shuffle. I'm more reassured of the population numbers now that I get further into the brood nest. Frame 2. Oh, I'm happy with this. This is a new frame that I gave them recently. And they have drawn it out probably 80%. There's brood on it. There's brood on this side. Just need to keep an eye out for the queen. There's pollen. Eggs. She's moving rapidly from one frame to another, it looks like, because there's eggs on 3 different frames rather than kind of all being laid on one frame and then moving to another one and laying up another frame. Oh, and oh, now this is interesting. I see the queen, but it does not appear to be the queen that I have had. So that could account, goodness, I never saw swarm cell. I don't think they swarmed. But it is, I've got to dig through my pocket for part of this queen catcher thing. There it is. Now where did she go? Now I see drones. She must have flipped over to the other side. So she's not marked, which means either they've groomed the last of the paint off of her, or I've got a new queen here. All right, I see her. All right, so there's my queen, and there's no mark on her back. If I'd brought all my gear, I would have probably marked her. But I'm just going to lay her down in the bottom here in the shade for a moment until I get through this last frame. There's a chance, it's a fairly unusual thing, but every once in a while I'm told that you can find 2 queens in the same hive. And so I'm just going to look for that possibility here. All right, I see lots of brood here, pollen. You know what I think could have happened? I was trying to rear queens in some other nukes, and I gave up on some of them, and I merged one back in here and just brought those frames back. And it's possible that one of the that I brought a queen cell that I thought was dead, because it was past the date when I was led to expect that it should have emerged. I brought it back over. I might have forced a swarm or forced a supersedure, but I would guess it was a swarm, because I am surprised by how few bees I have in here compared to what I was expecting before. But at any rate, I have a queen, and I do think this hive would probably be a little bit on the marginal side, but I think it's good enough. It's got enough resources and enough bees so that if I take the queen away from them, that they'll be able to make a set of queens for me, probably on several different frames here. All right, so now I need to choose some frames to go with the queen, and she needs some with actually, you know what, I think I'm going to take frame 1, because it seemed to be a lot of capped brood that should be emerging soon. So I think I'm going to move them over here. Now, here's the thing. We're going to put this one back because it's got more of the eggs. I was going to tell you something. I don't remember what it was. Oh, when I move them, some of these bees are going to leave the entrance on this side and fly back to the hive they've been in. And that's okay, because I'm going to give them, they'll be replaced basically by the brood that hatches out, and I'm going to shake off some bees from these other frames into the side that has the queen. And that's going to, that'll leave what are called the nurse bees. And the nurse bees are the newly hatched bees. And a lot of times they have not started to fly yet. And so the nurse bees will probably stay over on this side. They'll tend to the queen. They'll tend to the small amount of brood that's over there. Now I also need to give her a frame with some open nectar. That one doesn't have it. That's probably going to be this one. No, some pollen, but it looks pretty like a pretty dry frame. So, by process of elimination, yeah, that's got plenty of nectar. So I'm going to give the queen one frame that has nectar and some pollen, another frame with some brood, and now that I have those bees on that side, I'm going to let her out on the frame. Okay, so she's now climbing on that frame. So she should be able to, she should stay in place with no problem. I'm going to take these frames away. I'm going to give her one of these frames has an extra place to be able to lay some eggs if she exhausts those. So now the queen has 3 frames. And I'm going to move them down to this end. I'm going to make sure that we've got a tight fit across the top bars. And then I'm going to move, do that first. All right, now I'm going to take some bees from these other brood frames. Just going to lower them down in here and give them a good shake. And then we'll put the brood back over here. I'm probably going to do one more. Put it back. Now the flying bees will go back to their original side. More nurse bees will be hatching on both sides in short order. The queen has food, attendants, and a place to lay. Oh, I know. I'm gonna have to smoke these girls to get them out of the crevices. Hopefully now in 8 days, I'll have several queens that I can distribute to other colonies. And then this colony can get back to business. Alright, now the divider board, I'm going to move all the way down here. It's tight at the top and snug at the bottom and on the sides, so bees can't get around the board. Now I'm just going to brush these bees down into the box so they don't get smushed as I close the lid. And now in this location I have 2 colonies, and I go away hoping I did everything right. Leave my hive tool in. Now they'll sort themselves out between those 2 sides. They'll settle back down, and I'll come back in a week, 8 days, and see what we've got. I'll bring you along, of course.